This is a front-page story in the New York Times today on drug abuse in the NFL. It comes in the immediate wake of the Don Reese disclosures in Sports Illustrated and the George Rogers, Dave Wilson, New Orleans Saints revelations. It addresses the possibility that the integrity of professional football could be destroyed by gamblers who might participate in the drug traffic with some NFL players. There is no way that the NFL and the NFL Players Association can any longer sidetrack this problem. But the problem is hardly news, as long as 8 months ago, at the suggestion of NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle himself, ABC Sportsbeat exhaustively investigated the case of Carl Eller, former All-Pro defensive end of the Vikings, now a drug consultant to the NFL. Excerpts from that program are now more relevant than ever, so let's go back in time. Unbelievably, for the latter half of his football career, Carl Eller was a drug user, increasingly dependent on cocaine, then totally hooked. While he played football, he managed to barely hold together. But when his career ended and the cheering stopped, his life fell apart. His drug habit was so expensive he was forced into bankruptcy, and he underwent the humiliation of the public admission of his terrible secret. He was on the brink, but then he checked into St. Mary's in Minneapolis to rehabilitate himself. When he left St. Mary's, he had conquered the cocaine habit. He decided to build a new life, to devote himself to helping others avoid his mistake. Today, he lectures NFL coaches and teams on how to deal with drug problems. In this case, Bart Starr and the Green Bay Packers coaching staff. He also devotes himself to work at Warren Eustace House, a halfway house for teenagers under treatment for dependency on drugs or alcohol.
Yeah, because he's an alcoholic, and, it just kept going.
I think I can relate to that. Around the time of, when I was about the age group that you are now, I think I started not to deal with problems, and I used drugs. And I continued to use drugs for a long time.
A caring man, a man of culture, a civic leader. The world lay before him. I was puzzled by what had happened. How did a man like you get involved? How could it have happened to you?
Well, as I understand now, it's basically, there are some things that really go way back in my history that I just wasn't dealing with. Probably some pains or some feelings that I was avoiding, and when problems came up, I didn't really face them, and I used drugs to stay away from them.
Do you think that your disease was football-related?
To some extent, and I mean that there are a lot of things that you go through as a football player. Basically, you're put on a pedestal, and you have the money for one thing, which allows you to participate in an expensive drug like cocaine. But the other thing is that you're expected to succeed all the time, and when you fail, it's hard to admit to yourself that you failed. And so a way to keep from that is going to drugs. Another thing is that football is a sensational sport, and you live kind of the high life, and I think cocaine and drugs kind of feed into that. In other words, give you a real feeling of euphoria and grandiosity.
You're very close to your players, and particularly players who played as long as Carl did here. And there really was no suspicion on our part that he had been in drugs. We knew his lifestyle was a little different, but he was single, and he never missed anything or did not take part in anything we ever did.
How deep is the problem in the National Football League?
It's hard to say. I do know that there are some players that I know personally that are still involved and still using drugs. And I think that those players could be in real serious danger if something isn't really done about it. That's my concern, that these players can seek help and do something for themselves. And the other thing, too, is I'm concerned for the sport of football. I don't think it's very good for the sport of football.
In light of what you have just seen, it is vital to make these points. One, as said by Bud Grant, it is extremely difficult to detect the problem. Two, the origin of the problem is often deep-seated. Its beginnings frequently rooted long before any career in pro sports begins. Three, the league has not done a thorough enough job of policing the matter. Four, the Players Association must share the responsibility. They have been irresponsible in refusing to acknowledge the extent of the problem. Five, the constructive answer to this problem lies in a broad-based program of education, detection, treatment, and rehabilitation. The NFL must vastly expand its program of education and detection, going far beyond the Carl Ellers and Charles Jacksons. They and the Players Association must share the responsibility for trying to play down the issue in the past. Then, the NFL and the Players Association should enter a joint venture to purchase an institute like the one in Arizona, where Hollywood Henderson underwent treatment, where football players can, with privacy, get special treatment for special rehabilitation, for special skills. The NFL means too much to people in this country for the current image to persist.